Every night, as the world falls into darkness, some things are awakened from the deepest corners of our worst nightmares. These figures are not just products of fiction, they are symbols of fear, horror, and the things that we dare not face. Some hide in the shadows, others stalk their victims with a cold, unyielding rage. They live in the very cells of our minds, and when they appear on screen they remind us that sometimes, what we fear the most is the thing that we cannot escape. In this video, we'll delve into the chilling legends of 5 of the most terrifying movie monsters to ever haunt our cinema. Each one brings their own unique brand of terror, and once you encounter them, you'll never look at the world the same way again. From the relentless silence of the masked killer who is always one step behind, to the supernatural forces that invade your home, to the horrors lurking just beneath the surface of reality itself, brace yourself. These are the faces of your worst fears, brought to life in ways that will make you question whether you're truly alone in the dark. So, turn off the lights, lock the doors, and prepare for a journey into the realm where nightmares become reality. The terror begins now. Stay with us as we uncover the stories of these unforgettable, spine-chilling characters. Are you ready to face the horror?
You don't know what death is.
Pennywise. Pennywise is the main antagonist in Stephen King's 1986 horror novel It. He is an ancient, supernatural entity that primarily takes the form of a clown, Pennywise the Dancing Clown, to lure and terrorize children in the town of Derry, Maine. However, Pennywise is not just a clown, he is a shape-shifting entity, capable of becoming whatever his victims fear the most, whether it's a monstrous creature or an inanimate object, using fear as his primary source of power. The novel follows a group of children, known as the Losers Club, who come together to confront Pennywise after realizing that he has been terrorizing Derry for generations. Every 27 years, Pennywise awakens from a long slumber to feed on the fear and flesh of children. He thrives on their terror and grows stronger with each child he kills. The children in Derry find themselves trapped in a cycle of fear as Pennywise manipulates their worst nightmares to hunt them. One of Pennywise's most terrifying abilities is his power to manifest as the darkest fears of those he encounters. He uses this ability not only to frighten but also to control and kill. This is why he is so effective at tormenting his victims. He doesn't just prey on their physical vulnerabilities, but on their deepest psychological fears. His true form, however, is revealed to be a cosmic entity that exists outside of normal time and space, a being that feeds off fear itself. Pennywise's impact on horror fiction is immense. He has become an icon in popular culture, not only as a manifestation of childhood fears, but also as a symbol of the predatory nature of evil. His terrifying form, alongside his ability to shapeshift, has made him a character that is both a personal and universal nightmare. The character was first portrayed by Tim Curry in the 1990 television miniseries, where his portrayal became a defining image of Pennywise for an entire generation. More recently, Pennywise was brought to life by Bill Skarsgård in the 2017 and 2019 film adaptations, further cementing his place as one of the most terrifying characters in modern horror. What makes Pennywise especially terrifying is not just his physical appearance, but what he represents, the manifestation of fear itself. He is an unrelenting force, a predatory being who hunts his prey by exploiting their deepest anxieties, feeding off their terror. This makes him an almost unstoppable force. Every time he is confronted, he reappears, more powerful than before. Pennywise remains one of the most enduring and terrifying figures in horror, symbolizing the primal fears that reside in the darkest corners of our minds.
Where are you, Dr. Lecter?
I have no plans to call on you, Clarice. The world's more interesting with you in it. So you take care now to extend me the same courtesy.
You know I can't make that promise.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Hannibal Lecter is a complex and multifaceted character whose chilling presence has captivated readers and viewers for decades. Created by American author Thomas Harris, Lecter first appeared in Red Dragon 1981 as a secondary character, but quickly became the centerpiece of the series, featuring prominently in The Silence of the Lambs 1988, Hannibal 1999, and Hannibal Rising 2006. Lecter is a brilliant psychiatrist, highly educated and cultured, with a passion for fine art, music, and haute cuisine. However, beneath his cultured exterior lies a deeply disturbed individual with a predilection for murder, cannibalism, and psychological manipulation. What makes Lecter especially terrifying is his duality. On the surface, he is a gentleman, articulate, refined, and intelligent, with impeccable manners and a knack for charming those around him. He is a man of great sophistication, known for his love of opera, gourmet meals, and rare wines. Yet beneath this veneer of civility, he is a ruthless and cunning serial killer who derives pleasure from tormenting his victims both physically and psychologically. His intelligence and ability to hide his true nature are what make him such a terrifying figure, as he is able to blend into society and escape detection for so long. Lecter's psychology is as intricate as his crimes. In The Silence of the Lambs, he is portrayed as both a mentor and antagonist to FBI agent Clarice Starling. He takes an almost paternal interest in her, offering cryptic advice and guidance while simultaneously manipulating her emotions and motives. The relationship between Lecter and Starling is central to his character's appeal, as it reveals a side of him that is both tender and terrifying. He sees Starling as a worthy intellectual counterpart and enjoys playing psychological games with her, all while pursuing his own agenda. Lecter's background is explored more deeply in Hannibal Rising, where readers learn of his traumatic childhood experiences in Eastern Europe. As a young boy, he witnesses the brutal deaths of his family, which sets in motion his transformation into the monster he would later become. This tragic origin story adds layers to his character, making him both a victim and a villain, further blurring the line between good and evil. His actions, driven by a combination of psychological trauma and inherent evil, challenge the reader's understanding of morality and human nature. Over the years, Hannibal Lecter has become a cultural icon, particularly through the portrayal of the character in film. Anthony Hopkins' Academy Award-winning performance in The Silence of the Lambs 1991 cemented the character's place in cinematic history, making Lecter one of the most iconic villains ever to grace the screen. His calm, methodical manner, coupled with his disturbing acts of violence, made Hopkins' portrayal of Lecter both terrifying and mesmerizing. The subsequent films, Hannibal 2001 and Red Dragon 2002, expanded on Lecter's backstory and further solidified his role as a pop culture villain. The Hannibal TV series, starring Mads Mikkelsen in the title role, offered yet another fascinating take on the character, exploring his complex relationship with FBI profiler Will Graham, and delving into his psychological intricacies and obsessive behaviors. What makes Hannibal Lecter so enduring as a villain is not just his capacity for violence, but his intellect and manipulative nature. He is a master of psychological warfare, able to break down his victims and manipulate those around him with ease. He operates with a sense of superiority, viewing most people as beneath him, and often expressing contempt for the mediocrity he perceives in others. His disdain for humanity, coupled with his capacity for evil, gives him a chilling sense of invincibility, which makes him a terrifying figure in both fiction and popular culture. In essence, Hannibal Lecter represents the duality of human nature, the potential for brilliance and savagery to coexist in one mind. His character challenges the conventional boundaries between good and evil, making him not just a villain, but a tragic, complex figure whose actions are driven by a mixture of intelligence, trauma, and a deep sense of superiority. He remains one of the most compelling and disturbing characters in literature and film, a symbol of the darkness that can lurk within the human psyche.
Dr. Lecter. Dr. Lecter.
Are you okay? Krueger, and he loves children, especially little girls. Freddy's coming back. Soon he'll be strong enough. It's okay to be afraid. We're all afraid. Warn your friends. Warn everyone.
Freddy Krueger is a nightmarish figure whose mere presence can send chills down anyone's spine. As the central villain of A Nightmare on Elm Street, he has become a symbol of fear itself. Freddy is not just a man, he is the embodiment of terror, lurking in the very space where we are most vulnerable, our dreams. Wearing his signature red and green striped sweater, a battered fedora, and a menacing glove armed with razor-sharp blades on each finger, Freddy is instantly recognizable. But it's not just his appearance that makes him terrifying, it's the insidious way he hunts his victims. Freddy was once a man named Fred Krueger, a child murderer who was burned alive by the parents of his victims after he was acquitted of his crimes. However, death did not end his reign of terror. Freddy became a malevolent spirit, vengefully haunting the dreams of the children of Elm Street. In the dream world, Freddy holds unimaginable power. He can manipulate the very fabric of reality, turning a simple nightmare into a twisted, surreal landscape where anything can happen. In this dreamscape, Freddy is an all-powerful god, capable of transforming his victims into grotesque creatures or subjecting them to their deepest fears. His victims, trapped in their sleep, cannot escape. They are completely at his mercy, and he takes cruel pleasure in tormenting them before their inevitable death. One of Freddy's most terrifying abilities is his capacity to invade the subconscious of his victims. In the real world, his victims might be just ordinary teenagers, struggling with normal teenage issues. But in their dreams, Freddy transforms them into helpless prey. He can turn their own worst fears into horrifying realities, torturing them in ways that transcend mere physical pain. He can drag them into a nightmarish funhouse, twist their dreams into horrific scenarios, or even transform into their loved ones just to add to their confusion and despair. Freddy's sadistic nature makes every moment spent in his presence unbearable. He loves to taunt and mock his victims, often delighting in their terror and vulnerability. His cruel, raspy laugh echoes through the nightmare landscape, further amplifying the sense of hopelessness and dread. The true horror of Freddy Krueger lies in the fact that there's nowhere to hide from him. He operates in the one place where you are entirely defenseless, your mind. The idea that you can't escape him by simply staying awake makes him an especially persistent and terrifying threat. Freddy's victims are trapped in an endless cycle of torment, unable to wake up, each dream more dangerous than the last. It's not just about surviving Freddy's attacks. It's about surviving the nightmare of being trapped in his world. As his victims drift further into sleep deprivation, their grip on reality weakens, and Freddy gains more control, making escape increasingly impossible. Moreover, Freddy's role as a symbol of fear adds a psychological layer to his terror. He feeds on the anxieties of his victims, turning their subconscious mind into his playground. Freddy doesn't just kill, he breaks people mentally and emotionally, using their own minds against them. Whether it's manipulating their memories, preying on their insecurities, or using their fears to torment them, Freddy's brand of terror is deeply personal and unrelenting. Every encounter with him strips away the illusion of safety and leaves his victims feeling vulnerable and powerless. One of the most iconic aspects of Freddy is his twisted sense of humor. He doesn't just kill with precision, he kills with flair. His dark, sarcastic wit is as dangerous as his claws. Whether he's cracking jokes, delivering memorable one-liners, or mocking his victims, Freddy's cruel humor makes him an unpredictable and unsettling presence. His catchphrase, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," is one of many examples of how he turns terror into entertainment, making the pain and suffering of others seem like a joke. This sadistic humor amplifies the sense of helplessness that his victims experience, as they realize that Freddy's cruelty has no limits. Freddy's true strength is in his ability to invade your mind. In the waking world, we can run, fight, and escape from physical danger. But in the dream world, we are powerless. Freddy knows this, and he uses it to his advantage, making him one of the most terrifying horror icons of all time. The idea that we can't escape him, no matter how far we run, is a thought that gnaws at the very core of our fears. Freddy Krueger is not just a killer, he is an embodiment of everything that haunts us in our sleep. He represents the loss of control, the fear of the unknown, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that come from within.
Watch yourself. Look out. Oh, man. Oh. Look out. You got it? All right. This is the actual furnace room going into where they expected to perpetrated. Got a bit of a jump there. Got it? Come on back here. Follow me. Come.
Leatherface, the iconic villain from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, is one of the most chilling and enduring figures in horror cinema. His terrifying presence, marked by his grotesque mask made from human skin, has become a symbol of primal fear. Standing at an imposing height and with a monstrous physique, Leatherface is a figure of brutal violence and madness, yet there is an eerie sense of tragedy that surrounds him. His story is one of abuse, isolation, and the horrors of a broken family. Leatherface, born as Thomas Hewitt, is a product of a deeply dysfunctional family living in the desolate backwoods of Texas. The Hewitts, a cannibalistic clan, have long turned to murder and consumption to survive, and Thomas is raised in this grotesque environment. From a young age, Leatherface is subjected to neglect, violence, and manipulation by his twisted relatives, who mold him into a mindless killer. His family's constant abuse and psychological torment leave him emotionally stunted, unable to form normal relationships or understand right from wrong. What makes Leatherface so terrifying is not just his physical strength or brutal violence, but his complete lack of identity. His mask, made from the faces of his victims, symbolizes this fractured self. Leatherface wears the skin of the dead to disguise himself, creating a terrifying and almost animalistic persona. His silence and lack of words make him unpredictable, and his actions, driven by the twisted needs of his family, are more instinctual than calculated. He is not a sadistic killer driven by personal vendettas, but a monster shaped by his environment, forced to kill in service to his family's horrifying traditions. Leatherface's weapon of choice, a chainsaw, is an extension of his madness. The deafening roar of the chainsaw, paired with its relentless brutality, is the hallmark of his reign of terror. The chainsaw has become synonymous with Leatherface's image, a tool of destruction that mirrors the chaotic violence that runs through his veins. When Leatherface revs the chainsaw, it's as if the machine itself is a manifestation of his inner rage, a force that cannot be stopped. The very sound of the chainsaw invokes terror, creating a visceral sense of impending doom. Yet despite his terrifying appearance and horrific actions, there is a strange, unsettling vulnerability to Leatherface. He is not a cold-blooded, calculating monster, but rather a tragic figure whose violence is driven by a sense of loyalty to his family and a desperate need for acceptance. He is a childlike figure, reacting to the world around him with confusion and fear, unable to process his own feelings. His monstrous acts are not driven by hatred or malice, but by a warped sense of survival, a need to prove himself in a world that has stripped him of his humanity. The horror of Leatherface's character lies in his unpredictability and his primal instincts. Unlike many other horror villains who have clear motivations, Leatherface kills without rhyme or reason. His actions are dictated by the chaotic, violent world in which he was raised. He does not speak, and his face is often hidden behind the mask of human skin, making him appear less human and more like a force of nature, an unstoppable monster whose sole purpose is to bring death and destruction. Leatherface's terrifying presence is made all the more horrific by his family's twisted influence. He is not an isolated monster, he is part of a sick, cannibalistic clan that uses him as a tool of terror. The sheer depravity of his family's actions only adds to the horror of Leatherface's existence. He is a product of their madness, and every act of violence he commits is a manifestation of the horrors he has been taught to endure. In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, Leatherface's role evolves, but the essence of his terror remains the same. He is a silent, unstoppable force, a reflection of the darkest aspects of human nature, born from abuse and isolation. His mask is not just a grotesque disguise, but a symbol of the dehumanizing effects of a broken world. Through Leatherface, we are forced to confront the reality of how deeply trauma can scar the human soul, creating monsters that are both terrifying and tragic. Leatherface is more than just a villain. He is a symbol of the monstrous potential within us all when we are torn from our humanity and raised in violence. His haunting image will forever remain one of the most terrifying in horror. A creature born from madness, but still capable of stirring a strange sense of sympathy for the child that lies beneath the mask.
That day. This is the only known image of Thomas Hewitt, the man they call Leatherface. The case today still remains open.
Michael Myers. Born October 19, 1957. Killed his older sister October 31st, 1963. Killed 3 high school students October 31st, 1978. Also killed 3 nurses and a paramedic same night. Was believed to be dead, then killed 4 students. Hillcrest Academy, 1998. Has been missing, unheard of last 3 years. Now he's back.
Michael Myers is perhaps the most iconic and enduring slasher villain in the history of horror cinema. Introduced in John Carpenter's Halloween 1978, Michael has become a symbol of pure evil, embodying the concept of the unstoppable, emotionless killer who relentlessly pursues his victims with an eerie, silent determination. With his blank, expressionless mask and his slow, deliberate movements, Michael Myers is not just a killer. He is a force of nature, an embodiment of terror that has haunted audiences for decades. Michael Myers' story begins in the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois, where, as a 6-year-old child, he brutally murders his sister, Judith Myers. This horrific act marks the beginning of his dark journey. After the murder, Michael is sent to the Smiths Grove Sanitarium, where he is institutionalized under the care of Dr. Samuel Loomis. Loomis, who becomes one of the central characters in the Halloween franchise, is deeply concerned by Michael's lack of emotion and his apparent obsession with violence. He believes Michael is beyond redemption, pure evil in human form. For 15 years, Michael remains locked away in the sanitarium, but on Halloween night 1978, he escapes and returns to Haddonfield, seemingly without any clear motivation other than to kill. The original Halloween film centers on his return to his hometown and his search for new victims, particularly babysitter Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Laurie is unknowingly connected to Michael, as she is the daughter of his now deceased sister. Throughout the film, Michael stalks Laurie and her friends, picking them off one by one in a series of tense and chilling scenes. One of the most distinctive features of Michael Myers is his mask. The simple, pale, expressionless face has become one of the most recognizable images in horror. The mask's lack of emotion, combined with its eerie stillness, perfectly mirrors Michael's own nature. He is a blank slate, an enigma, a killer with no apparent motive other than to kill. This lack of motivation is one of the key elements that make Michael Myers so terrifying. He is not driven by revenge, hate, or even a specific goal. Instead, he is driven by an inscrutable primal need to kill. Another striking characteristic of Michael Myers is his silence. Unlike other slasher villains like Freddy Krueger or Chucky, who taunt or speak to their victims, Michael is completely mute. His complete lack of expression, and his unwavering focus on his victims, adds an unsettling quality to his character. The silence heightens the tension in every scene, making Michael's presence all the more oppressive. He is a force that doesn't need to speak to instill fear. His actions, and the looming sense of dread, speak volumes. Michael Myers' character has undergone several changes over the course of the Halloween franchise, yet his core nature has remained remarkably consistent. The original Halloween film spawned numerous sequels, each exploring Michael's character in different ways. In Halloween 2, 1981, Michael's pursuit of Laurie continues, revealing that she is in fact his sister, a plot point that becomes a central theme of the early films in the series. However, after Halloween 2, the franchise began to experiment with different storylines. Some films, like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch 1982, moved away from Michael Myers altogether, but audiences continued to demand his return. In Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers 1988, Michael reappears after being seemingly killed in the previous film. This marks the start of the Thorn trilogy, where Michael is revealed to be under the influence of a dark cult, adding a supernatural element to his character. However, this storyline was later retconned in Halloween H20, 20 years later, 1998, which ignores the events of the previous films and re-establishes Michael's pursuit of Laurie. The most significant reinvention of Michael Myers came with Rob Zombie's 2007 remake of Halloween, which provided a new, more detailed backstory for the character. In this version, Michael's childhood is portrayed as one of neglect, abuse, and bullying, painting him as a deeply troubled and violent individual. However, despite these humanizing elements, Michael's transformation into a killer remains rooted in his psychopathy and his need to destroy. In 2018, Halloween was rebooted again, this time as a direct sequel to the original film, ignoring all previous sequels. This film, simply titled Halloween, reintroduces Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, who has spent the past 40 years preparing for Michael's return. This installment emphasizes Michael's connection to Laurie, focusing on the trauma he caused and the terror he continues to instill.
Say something, Michael. Say something. You can feel it, can't you? It's a part of you, Michael. It's a part of you. Say something. Say something, Michael.
Michael's mythos is further deepened, but his essential nature remains unchanged. He is the embodiment of evil, an unstoppable force that cannot be reasoned with or understood. Michael Myers has become more than just a character in a slasher film. He is a symbol of terror. The mask, the slow, methodical movements, and the silent, relentless pursuit of victims have all contributed to making Michael one of the most recognizable figures in horror. Over the years, Michael has inspired countless imitators, but none have captured the same level of pure fear. His legacy as a horror icon is cemented, and his influence can be seen in every modern slasher villain, from Jason Voorhees to Ghostface. Whether through his chilling presence in the original 1978 film or his many reincarnations in sequels and reboots, Michael Myers continues to terrorize audiences, proving that true evil never dies, it only waits for the right moment to return.
Can you smell the circus, Georgie? There's peanuts, cotton candy, hot dogs, and...
Popcorn?
popcorn! Is that your favorite?
Uh-huh.
Mine too! Because they pop. Pop, 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 pop. Pop, pop, pop.
I should get going now.
Without your bow? You don't want to lose it, Georgie. Bill's gonna kill you. Here. Take it. Take it, Georgie.
As we've seen, the world of horror is filled with figures who strike fear into our hearts in different ways. From the malevolent force that haunts our dreams, to the silent, emotionless killer who is impossible to stop, to the calculating mastermind whose charm hides a brutal, monstrous side, each villain taps into a unique aspect of our deepest anxieties. Some are driven by primal violence, attacking with savage intensity, while others work in the shadows of our minds, manipulating our perceptions of reality. Some use fear to control, others are simply born from it, relentless and unstoppable. What unites them all is their ability to make us feel powerless in the face of pure evil. But which one truly stands out as the most terrifying? Is it the one who haunts us in our sleep, turning our dreams into nightmares? The one whose intelligence makes him a cold, calculating predator? The one whose brutality is unmatched, leaving a wake of destruction? Or perhaps the one whose silence and unyielding presence make him the embodiment of pure fear? Ultimately, the most terrifying figure in horror is a matter of personal fear. Some may find the psychological horror of the mind-bending manipulator to be the greatest threat, while others may be more terrified by the raw, physical violence of a relentless killer. There's no right answer, because the true power of these villains lies in the way they reflect the deepest, most universal fears we all share. So, the question remains, who is truly the most terrifying? The answer is up to you, the viewer. The true terror is not just in the characters themselves, but in the way they make us feel, in how they invade our minds and linger in our thoughts long after the story ends. Who is the most terrifying?
What's the boogeyman?